Hello, fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today I'm going to be going over my horror library, and this time it's going to be authors whose name end with the letter H. And there's one writer more than any other that will be in here. Actually, there's two, but this first one is the one that will own this letter more than any others, and that is James Herbert. And this is my only James Herbert hardback. It's called The Magic Cottage. And it's apparently supposed to be very scary. Looks like this is a first edition. Yeah, this is a first American edition. James Herbert is an English writer, so you'd have to have first editions from England in order to have true first editions. This was owned by Mr. Sam R. Talley Jr., and he wanted us all to know it. I don't know if you can see that. The other writer that's going to claim most of the H's is Joe Hill. Of course, Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King. He decided to change his name in order to show that he isn't getting famous because his dad is Stephen King. But if your dad is Stephen King, I don't know if there's any way to ever not get famous because your dad is Stephen King. But I'm sad to say, in fact, I'm going to have to really amend this soon. I haven't read any Joe Hill. I've just grabbed it whenever I could find it because I'm hoping that he's really good. So this is NOS4A2, which is Nosferatu. And it is a first edition, and this time it really is a first edition. Let's see if it's a first print. Yeah, this is a first print. First edition of that, which is cool. I don't know how many of these I'm going to be able to fit on here. I also have Joe Hill's horns. Which one should I start with, you think? Probably the short stories is what I'll start with. Let's see. There's some kind of Morse code on the end papers here. I don't know what that says. Yeah, this is a first edition, first print. This is probably the one I'll start with. 20th Century Ghosts by Joe Hill. The cool thing about my copy of this one is that it is signed and has a drawing by Joe Hill. I hope you can see that. There's a little ghost right here that Joe Hill drew, and then he signed it down here, and he dated it 9/18. I can't tell if that's 07 or 17. I would assume. When was this? Yeah, it's probably 07. This was published in 2005. This is a first edition, stated first U.S. edition. So, yeah. This is probably where I'm going to start. See what I think of him. So you can expect videos coming up of me talking about some of Joe Hill's short stories from 20th Century Ghosts. I also have Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill. It's a tiny book club edition, definitely on this one. Yeah, it'd be interesting to be the son of somebody as famous as Stephen King. I don't hold Joe Hill changing his name against him in any way, shape, or form. It kind of makes sense. I think it's a solid move. I don't think there's any way that he could ever be treated truly different in the publishing industry. I mean, I guess, I don't know if anybody knows the story of this, but I guess if he were to truly change his name and send in these manuscripts, not to publishers that he knows or his dad knows, just as like unknown slosh pile stuff, which I just can't imagine he did. I don't know, man. Joe Hill. I've heard great things, so I'm really looking forward to reading him. Tell me what you think in the comments. I'm interested in hearing more about this. I really am. Okay, that's all my hardbacks for the letter H in my horror library. Moving on to paperbacks, the first one I have is one that I'm super excited about, which is The Wicker Man. And this is written by Robin Hardy and Anthony Schaefer. Now, I've done some deep dive research into this, but I did it a long time ago. So if any of this is incorrect, let me know. This is a novel that was written after the film, retelling the film. However, there is a book that apparently inspired I think Anthony Schaefer, about this same subject. And that book is harder to find. And I would really love to get my hands on that. I wonder what it's called. I'll put the book cover here so you can see it. That book I would really love to find. Okay, here we go. James Herbert, Haunted. Great 80s cover on this one, although it might be a 90s. Man, this book is in some serious good condition. Wheresoever ghosts do dwell, the mind is but the door. I don't really want to open that too intensely because this is in such great condition. Beautiful drawings in here. This might be a good place to start with Herbert because it's kind of a short novel for a horror novel. 1988 this came out, and it is... Oh, it's got somebody's Intel card. That's interesting. From Arizona. And the back, he did it all in Japanese. He must work with the Kokusai furnaces at Intel. I don't know. Anyway, this is only 223 pages long. So this might be where I start with James Herbert. Again, this is somebody that I never heard of as a young horror reader. I think we really only had like the big ones out here. Stephen King, Dean Koontz, John Saul, Peter Straub, and Edgar Allan Poe, and Lovecraft. And if you went a little bit out, like I read The Exorcist when I was young, and then a little bit of Clive Barker. So there's a lot of these writers that I just missed out on. Next up, by James Herbert, we have The Fog. Great cover on that one as well. A Certain Classic. Penguin Encyclopedia of Horror and the Supernatural. Is this the book that this is from the UK, this copy. It was £2.50, if that's how you say it. I don't know what this publisher is. New English Library, Hodder and Stoughton. Yeah, I wonder, is this the book that the film, the Carpenter film was based off? I don't know. The Fog by James Herbert. So hard. Must have been so hard to write horror in the 80s. Right now I'm reading Swan Song by Robert McCannon, which is another horror writer that I just missed as a teenager. I don't know how. But it is interesting to me how similar it is to The Stand. It really kind of is. Next I have James Herbert, Sepulchre. I think that's how you say that. Sepulchre. A Conflict of Evils. This is also a New English Library version. And it was £3.50. £3.50. I don't know if I'm saying any of this correctly. But there you go. Looks like I'm running out of space. Next we have James Herbert's The Dark. I think this is one of his more popular ones. I think his most popular one is the one about the rats, which I don't have. I think I did at one point, but I just wasn't as interested in the concept. Like I said earlier, I like supernatural horror. I don't know. Am I crazy? Would I like The Rats by James Herbert, or is it really just a pack of rats gorily eating people? Which, I mean, is cool. I dig it, but it's not what I would want to read. This is only 314 pages long. Not bad. The Dark by James Herbert. Where should I begin with James Herbert? Moving along, we have James Herbert Moon, which has got an interesting keyhole cover because just the corner is cut. So you can see that then it opens to the splash page. I was expecting a nightmare. Sorry, I was reading this. The nightmare begins before you sleep. I was expecting a werewolf underneath that. That did not turn out as I expected. Yeah, I don't know if this is a werewolf book. James Herbert, The Spear. These are all signets now. The Spear. Neo-Nazi cultists and unholy demonic powers strike out from an evil past to claim the future. All right. Moving on from James Herbert, we get a kind of a wild one here, and this is Fear by L. Ron Hubbard. A classic tale of creeping surreal menace and horror. One of the really, really good ones, says Stephen King. Of course, Stephen King put a quote on everything. This is L. Ron Hubbard doing horror. Apparently, it also includes a horror story called Borrowed Glory. Yeah, so this one's in really good condition and looks unread. It is unread by me. Here's a little deeper dive, somebody I hadn't heard of when I was a kid. This is published by Daw, and it's called Blood Pact. It's by Tanya Huff. Never heard of Tanya Huff or Blood Pact, but it looks like to be some kind of zombie thing. The Restless Dead. It began with the call no daughter ever wants to get. The call that told private investigator Vicki Nelson her mother had died. Mrs. Nelson's co-worker at the Queen's University Life Science Department told Vicki that the cause of death was a heart attack and that they'd be waiting for her to arrive in Kingston to make the funeral arrangements. But what started as an all-too-normal personal tragedy soon became the most terrifying case of Vicki's career. For when Marjorie Nelson's body mysteriously disappeared from the funeral home, Vicki, her sometime lover and fellow investigator, vampire hunter Fitzroy, and her former homicide squad partner, Detective Sergeant Mike Salusi, realized that there was something unnatural about her mother's demise. Vicki swore she'd find the culprit and see that her mother was properly laid to rest. But what she hadn't counted on was that someone at Queen's University seemed determined to keep Miss Nelson on the job, alive or dead. I read that and don't feel like I took any of that in. Okay. Next, I got a couple of books that move on the Amityville Horror series. Of course, the first Amityville Horror book, I think, was Jay Anson that wrote that one. But here we have Amityville 2, The Possession, and this is written by Hans Holzer. The true story behind the sensational and horrifying new motion picture. I've watched the Amityville 2 movie recently, and there's a part where his face starts to bubble and distort that was really, really wild. Other than that, I don't know if it's really a movie that's worth it. And then I have The Secret of Amityville by Hans Holzer. Out of the blood-stained past, revealed at last the evil force that doomed so many to a hideous fate. What a wild time. I remember watching Amityville Horror for the first time and my mom being like, this is a true story. So terrifying. And then, of course, I had to get Jay Anson's book and read that. So I read that when I was a teenager. And last but not least, we have Styx by Christopher Hyde. This is a beat up book with a truly bent, leaning spine. Thousands of years ago, mankind made the gigantic leap from hulking Neanderthal to lordly Cro-Magnon. The explanation for that evolutionary step, the missing link, has never been found until now. An earthquake rocks Yugoslavia, uncovering the ghostly subterranean world of the awesome Sobrano Cave. Its amazing paintings and fossils chronicle the existence of an ancient, mysterious race. As the dawn of man is slowly pieced together by an international investigative team, they discover that this unusual tribe disappeared deep into the earth, leaving a trail of paintings along the banks of an underground river. When another earthquake seals the cave for all time, the trapped survivors have no choice. There is only one possible way out, and that is to follow a path taken 40,000 years ago. They must ride the river Styx all the way to hell. Ridiculous. I guess it's Lost World Horror. That's pretty cool. 1982. First printing 1982, and this is first printing. I don't know. I'm going to say this. Has anybody read this? I seriously doubt it. If you have, let me know. So I don't have any writers in the letter I. So next will be J, which should be small little category. And then we do K, which is insane. And it's insane because, of course, Stephen King publishes with King as his last name. So that's going to have to be its own video. And that shelf is in my bedroom, so I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. We shall see. But yeah, next you can expect the letter J. All right. Thank you very much for watching.